Earlier, when we talked about the universal selector, I mentioned one use case where the universal selector is accepted by some front-end developers, and that's for something called a CSS reset. So I'd like to talk briefly about what a CSS reset is, compare the different CSS resets that are out there, and compare those with something called a normalize, and ultimately decide on a strategy to use from here on out. So the goal of a CSS reset is to make it so that our CSS renders consistently across multiple browsers. Now, so far in this series, we haven't run into any problems because we haven't done any testing in any browser other than Chrome. Eventually, however, we'll contend with slight variations between one browser and another, and often we don't become aware of cross-browser differences in stylings until we're way into the game and it's a little too late to standardize on something, and we end up just sort of patching fixes in. So, if we use a CSS reset, we can get around a lot of these styling differences in a standard way. And the earlier on in a project that we adopt a CSS reset, the easier it will be to code around, because we'll know exactly what we need to change in our own CSS. So if you do a search for CSS reset, you'll get a few different options. At the very top is the Eric Myers reset. This is probably one of the most common ones, and we'll look at it in just a moment, but I find it useful to go to cssreset.com, which compares various reset options. So I'm going to click on that, and you can see here a list of common resets, including a normalize, which is down here. Now these are ordered according to how many times someone has clicked on this get the code button. It doesn't necessarily reflect the popularity of these resets on the web as a whole. But from my experience, this still represents pretty fairly what some of the popular options are. And you can see that the Eric Meyer reset is at the top. Now there are some other lists of CSS resets out there, and once you get to the point where you're really excited about getting a good CSS reset, definitely explore some other sites for inspiration.